Ladies, let's talk about what happens when you truly ignore a man who's been taking you for granted, not in a petty, revenge-driven way, but in a powerful, self-respecting way. When you decide to ignore someone who's been inconsistent or treating you like an option, something powerful happens. You reclaim your energy. You're no longer operating from a place of needing validation or attention. Instead, your silence becomes your strength. You send a clear message without speaking a word. You are not someone to be taken lightly. That moment of pulling back resets the balance. Suddenly, the comfort they had in knowing you'd always be there begins to fade. They begin to feel your absence. And that absence speaks volumes more than any long paragraph you could have sent. By not reacting, not replying, and not chasing, you stop feeding their ego. The attention they once got without effort is gone, and it forces them to reflect. This break in the cycle shifts the dynamic completely. If things were stuck in a confusing place where you felt like you were always waiting, it forces movement. Either they step up and meet you at your level, or they quietly walk away, revealing they were never that invested to begin with. And here's the beautiful part. Both outcomes benefit you. You either get clarity or closure, and both are a win. Choosing not to respond also gives you emotional distance. It gives you space to ask, is this really what I want? You become stronger every day you don't settle for crumbs. You start realizing that ignoring someone isn't about being cold-hearted or dramatic. It's about refusing to participate in patterns that drain you. Silence becomes your way of honoring your worth. And when a man truly values you, your silence will not go unnoticed. It won't be met with more silence. It will be met with effort, curiosity, and change. Most importantly, ignoring the wrong person opens the door for the right one. The person who doesn't need games or silence to recognize your value will come without confusion. In the end, when you stop chasing, you become unforgettable. Not because you tried harder, but because you walked away with grace and confidence. And that is what sticks in someone's mind forever. The person who stopped giving energy to what wasn't growing always leaves the deepest impression. When you stop reaching out, stop replying instantly, and stop showing up in all the little ways you used to, something shifts in the energy. He starts to notice that your presence, which once felt so constant, is suddenly gone. And that absence speaks louder than words ever could. People often don't realize what they had until it's missing. And your silence becomes the wake-up call he never expected. It's not about playing games. It's about allowing him the space to feel the gap that only you used to fill. In that quiet space, he starts to notice the difference between attention and connection. The compliments, the reactions, the laughs, those little moments you offered freely are no longer there, and he begins to miss them. Where before he may have felt sure of your availability, he now feels uncertain. That uncertainty leads to reflection. He starts to question his role in the disconnection. Was he too distant? Did he take you for granted? These questions don't come when you keep giving. They come in the silence. When he finally has to sit with the reality of losing your energy, ignoring him completely doesn't guarantee he'll come running back, but it does guarantee something more important: clarity. It forces him to think instead of coast. It shows him that access to you is earned, not assumed. The dynamic changes the moment you choose yourself instead of chasing him. Even if he doesn't say it out loud, he feels the difference. He realizes that you were never just there. You were giving, investing, and building something real. Without your presence, the silence becomes deafening, and the emotional gap widens. What happens next depends entirely on him. Some will rise to the moment, realizing they need to step up before they lose something valuable. Others will fade, revealing they were only there for convenience, not connection. Either way, your silence reveals the truth. You don't need to explain, beg, or fight for someone who's meant for you. All you have to do is pause, step back, and watch what happens. The right person won't need the silence to realize your worth, but the wrong one might only understand it once you're no longer around. When you constantly respond to someone, even in small ways, you unknowingly give them the comfort of knowing you're always there. It becomes easy for them to take your presence for granted because they've never had to question it. Every reply, every like, every quick response feeds the idea that they don't have to put in much effort to keep you around. That kind of reassurance allows them to coast without ever really committing or considering how their actions or lack of action are affecting you. They feel secure in your availability, and that security can lead to complacency. But when you stop reacting and pull your energy back, that comfort begins to fade. The things they used to expect from you, your good morning messages, your check-ins, your attention, suddenly disappear. What once felt normal now feels like a loss, and that shift creates discomfort. That discomfort is powerful because it forces them to pay attention. Instead of living in the ease of your consistency, they begin to wonder, what changed? And in that wondering, reflection begins. They start to question why you stopped, what role they played, and whether they took your efforts too lightly. This silence becomes a mirror. It shows them that your presence wasn't something to be assumed, it was something that required mutual effort and respect. And when that effort isn't returned, you quietly step away. You don't need to announce it, argue, or prove a point. Just the absence of your energy is enough to disrupt their sense of ease. It's no longer about punishing them. It's about preserving your own self-worth and emotional peace. You remove yourself from the dynamic that was feeding their ego and not feeding your soul. What they choose to do with that silence says everything about who they are and what they truly want. Some might try to come back, realizing they miss not just your attention, but your presence, your heart, and your consistency. Others might stay silent too, proving that they were never fully invested. Either way, you win, because you've stopped pouring into someone who never truly appreciated the depth of what you gave. You've stopped feeding an ego and started feeding your own strength. When you find yourself stuck in a cycle of almost something, where the connection never really moves forward but never fully ends either, it can start to feel emotionally exhausting. You're left questioning everything, his intentions, your value in the relationship, and whether you're just being strung along. These patterns become familiar, and even though they're painful, you stay in them because they give you the smallest glimpse of hope. You keep waiting for clarity, for a real step forward, but instead, you're met with the same half effort over and over again. Ignoring him completely is how you break that cycle. It's how you stop feeding into the loop that keeps you stuck. When you remove your attention, you create a sudden gap, one that disrupts the rhythm he's grown used to. He no longer receives the regular reassurance of your presence, and that absence forces a decision. Without the constant comfort of your responses and energy, he has to either make a move or watch you slip away. It creates a kind of pressure that never existed when you were always available. That pressure can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. It brings the truth to the surface. Some people only begin to realize the depth of their feelings when there's a real risk of loss. Others use the silence as an opportunity to quietly bow out, confirming that they were never truly serious in the first place. Either way, the pattern is broken. The cycle of uncertainty and emotional inconsistency is no longer being sustained by your effort alone. You've stepped out of the loop, and now it's up to him to either meet you or let you go. In taking that step back, you protect yourself from further emotional wear and tear. You stop hoping for change from someone who's already shown you a pattern. And most importantly, you make room for something real, whether it's with him, if he chooses to show up properly, or with someone new who doesn't need silence to see your worth. Ignoring him isn't about punishment, it's about growth. It's how you stop dancing in circles and start moving forward. There are times when no amount of talking, explaining, or pleading seems to make a difference. There are times when no amount of talking, explaining, or pleading seems to make a difference. You try to express how you feel, what you need, and what's hurting you, but the other person either doesn't listen or doesn't change. That's when you begin to realize that silence can be more powerful than any conversation. It's not about being passive-aggressive or trying to manipulate someone. It's about recognizing that words have lost their impact, and the only thing left to do is step away quietly. When you go silent, you shift the energy completely. You're no longer trying to convince someone of your worth or begging for attention or clarity. Your absence speaks the message your words never could. It says you've stopped trying, not out of spite, but because you've realized your time and energy deserve better. That kind of silence is hard to ignore. It lingers, it echoes, it creates space where they once felt secure, and that space becomes deeply uncomfortable for someone who took your presence for granted. What makes silence so powerful is that it cannot be argued with. Words can be twisted, misinterpreted, or dismissed, but silence offers no room for denial. It forces the other person to sit with their own thoughts. They start to notice the lack of notifications, the missing check-ins, the absence of your support, and as those small voids build, it becomes clear that you are doing much more than they realized. They begin to feel what it's like to not have your constant presence, and that quiet realization can change everything. Choosing silence is not about trying to hurt someone. It's about finally protecting yourself. It's the calm decision to stop pouring into someone who only gave you pieces. You walk away without a dramatic exit or a final statement because you no longer need to explain yourself. You've already said enough. Now you're done talking, and that's what finally makes them listen. When you stop giving your time, attention, and emotional energy to someone who hasn't earned it, the entire dynamic begins to shift. Suddenly, he's not the one setting the tone anymore. You're no longer responding to his late-night texts, waiting around for him to make plans, or adjusting your schedule just to fit into his world. By stepping back, you remove the comfort he once had in knowing you were always available. That comfort starts to fade the moment your energy is no longer there to support it. This shift can be confusing to him at first. He's used to being in control, knowing exactly how to keep you interested without giving too much. But now the balance has changed, and he can feel it. He senses the gap where your presence used to be. The texts come less frequently, the conversations dry up, and for the first time, he has to face the silence you've created. That silence isn't empty. It's filled with the strength of someone who has finally chosen herself over temporary validation. As he sits with that change, he's left with a choice. He's left with a choice. He can either step up and meet you at the level of consistency and care you deserve, or he can fade into the background, confirming what you already suspected, that he was never truly invested. Either way, the decision is no longer yours to force. You've done your part, and now the next move is his. This is the moment where he either rises to your value or removes himself completely from the equation. What's most important is that you've stopped feeding a dynamic that only benefited him. You've taken your power back, by recognizing that your energy is valuable and shouldn't be handed out to someone who doesn't appreciate it. Whether he responds or disappears, you've already won. Because the real victory isn't in getting him to chase you, it's in choosing to stop chasing someone who was never truly showing up for you in the first place. Ignoring the wrong person is not just an act of pulling away from someone who doesn't value you. It's an act of making space in your life for someone who will. When you stop pouring your energy into a person who gives you mixed signals, who keeps you guessing, or who only shows up when it's convenient for them, you begin to create emotional room. That space you were once filling with overthinking, waiting, and hoping can now be used for clarity, peace, and the possibility of something better. It's hard at first because letting go feels like losing something, but what you're actually doing is clearing a path. When you hold on to someone who isn't choosing you fully, you unintentionally block the love and attention that someone else could give you. It's like keeping your hands full with something that doesn't nourish you, which leaves no room to receive something that truly could. People often fear the silence after walking away, but that silence is what allows healing to begin. In that quiet, you begin to hear your own voice again. You remember your worth. You realize that love isn't supposed to feel confusing, distant, or one-sided. The right person won't need you to go silent to realize your value. They won't need to feel your absence to see what you bring to their life. They will recognize it in your presence, in your words, and in your energy. They will meet you with the same level of effort and care that you naturally give. That kind of connection feels calm, clear, and consistent, not like a guessing game. And once you've had space from the wrong energy, you become much more protective of who gets close to you again. So when you ignore the one who isn't showing up, you're not just disconnecting from him, you're reconnecting with yourself. You're saying, without words, that you're no longer interested in almosts or maybes. You're saving your emotional availability for someone who chooses you with certainty and respect. And in doing that, you open your heart, not to the past, but to something far more fulfilling than you ever imagined when you were still holding on. When you stop reaching out and step back from someone, it naturally creates a moment of truth. In that silence, his real intentions begin to surface. If he genuinely cares, he won't just let you go without a word. He'll notice the change, feel the difference, and try to understand why things shifted. He won't be able to sit comfortably in the silence because he values your presence. That's when he starts asking questions, checking in, and making an effort to rebuild what may have started to break. True interest doesn't stay silent when something meaningful begins to fade. On the other hand, if he disappears the moment you stop chasing, that tells you everything you need to know. His lack of action becomes your clarity. Someone who was never fully invested won't fight to keep you. He might not even notice you've pulled away, or he might notice and simply not care enough to do anything about it. That may sting at first, but it's a gift in disguise. It saves you from wasting more energy on someone who was only there for convenience or comfort, not for connection or commitment. Testing his intentions by stepping back isn't about playing mind games. It's about creating enough space to see clearly. When emotions are running high and you're the one always trying, it can be hard to recognize who's truly there for you. Distance brings perspective. It helps you see who puts in effort and who disappears the moment it's not easy. You're not demanding anything. You're simply allowing their true colors to show without your influence keeping things afloat. You're simply allowing their true colors to show without your influence keeping things afloat. Sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing at all. Let him reveal himself through his actions or silence. Both are answers. And when you stop giving all the energy, you give yourself the chance to observe, to breathe, and to decide with a clear mind. Whether he comes closer or walks away, the silence becomes who is meant to stay from who was never really there to begin with. Choosing to ignore someone who once had easy access to your emotions is never easy in the beginning. The urge to reach out, to explain yourself, or to check if they've noticed your absence can be overwhelming. You may question whether you're doing the right thing, or if you're simply being too harsh. These thoughts are normal, because pulling away from someone you once cared about creates discomfort. It feels unnatural to stop showing up for someone who at one point occupied space in your heart. But with each day you hold your boundary, something inside you starts to shift. That emotional dependence you once had begins to weaken. The silence that once felt empty starts to feel peaceful. You stop looking for signs from them and start focusing on signs of your own growth. You realize that your peace matters more than being half loved. Slowly, you begin to detach, not from the person, but from the need to be seen and chosen by someone who couldn't meet you where you deserved to be. This internal shift builds strength. It doesn't happen all at once, but each time you resist the urge to break your silence for someone who made you feel small, you prove to yourself that you're capable of more. You start to feel grounded in your own worth. You stop giving in to the cycle of hope and disappointment. You begin to feel the freedom of no longer being emotionally tied to inconsistency. That strength becomes your armor, protecting you from falling back into the same painful patterns. As time passes, you look back and realize how far you've come. Not because they changed, but because you did. You chose yourself in a moment when it would have been easier to seek comfort from the familiar. You grew stronger not by holding on to someone, but by letting go. And that strength doesn't just help you heal, it reshapes the way you love, the way you protect your heart, and the way you show up for yourself moving forward. When you stop chasing someone, it sends a message far more powerful than words ever could. It shows that you have recognized your own value and have chosen not to waste it on someone who fails to appreciate it. That kind of confidence doesn't go unnoticed. When someone is used to your attention, your presence, and your willingness to stay despite mixed signals, the sudden absence hits harder than anything you could have said. It lingers in their mind because silence makes people reflect in ways constant noise never could. In your silence, they begin to remember the things they took for granted, the way you made them feel seen, the way you were consistent, and the way you offered care without asking for much in return. Those memories become clearer with time, especially when they don't have them anymore. And that is when they start to realize that not everyone would have treated them the way you did. Your decision to walk away with dignity and self-respect leaves a deeper mark than any fight or dramatic exit. What they may have overlooked before now becomes something they compare others to, because someone who is confident enough to stop chasing and strong enough to let go doesn't come around often. Your silence shows maturity, strength, and self-worth, and those qualities are not easy to forget. It's not the silence itself that makes you unforgettable, it's the message behind it. The message that says, I know what I deserve, and I won't settle for less. I know. When you articulate what you deserve, and I won't settle for less, in the end, walking away isn't about punishing them or hoping they come back. It's about honoring yourself. And ironically, that is what makes you stand out the most. The ones who choose themselves, who don't beg to be loved, who quietly let go when they are no longer valued, those are the people who stay in someone's mind long after the connection has ended. That's the kind of unforgettable that no one can fake and no one can replace.